Quotation from myself, segment 37, quotation number 432. Trying not to repeat the mistakes their parents have made often became the children's obsession. As if haunted by the parents' unhappiness, however correctly or incorrectly perceived, the children will resolve to have completely different lives. And yet this, even if they succeed, does not always bring their own happiness. For the different life only presents them with almost infinite opportunity to make different mistakes. As a result, a life different from somebody else's unhappy one is not necessarily happy, but rather the one which is differently, if this is of any solace, unhappy. Making the goal of one's own life to right the wrongs of somebody else's is not only futile, but self-destructive. For any action which are engendered not by natural inclinations, but by the spirit of contrariety, are at the end harmful to us. 433. Both the economic prosperity and social advantages in life are based on monopoly, that is, the exclusive possession or control of something. And whenever any sphere of human endeavor becomes open to all members of the society at large, it ceases to be profitable in both aforementioned senses, as anyone previously excluded, by now a beneficiary of the universal accessibility, discovers sooner or later. 434. An equitable redistribution of wealth, both as an idea and as a practice, is much more appealing to those living in a culture of scarcity than that of an abundance. For the first are preoccupied mainly with mere survival, while the second with indulgence into the conspicuous consumption, which inevitably leads to competition, that is, trying to be better or better off than the others, and competition by definition is incompatible with equality. Therefore, it is not surprising that socialism, which is predicated on the equitable redistribution of wealth, has been embraced primarily by the poor nations, especially in times when sharing became the necessity of life, and almost uniformly rejected by the rich ones. Yet even the poor countries could not stick to it for long, since a constant comparison of their low standard of living with that of the rich ones produced chronic dissatisfaction and nagging irresistible desire to keep up with the Joneses. This can only lead us to two equally inevitable conclusions. First, given the existence of the rich nation, which are not just enjoying by constantly bragging about and promoting their way of life, it is psychologically impossible to maintain for a long time the purity of the egalitarian socialism in a poor country, due to a quite natural envy and jealousy of its inhabitants toward the high standard of living in the rich capitalist countries. Somehow nobody pays attention to the poor ones. Secondly, closely following the first, is that socialism is only possible when it encompasses the whole world, provided this world remain in a perpetual state of scarcity. Judged by the economic condition the overwhelming majority of the world population are in today, it seems we are much closer to this state than we would have liked to be. Verse 35. In the future, as in the past, only those will be content, if not happy, who would be able to accept and settle for a dignified poverty. 436. What do people gain by telling lies? Mostly this. Even when they speak the truth, they aren't believed anymore. 437. To love is to be loved. To hate is to be hated. One always gets back what one intends to give, as if it has been fated. Number 438. Originality, ideally at least, should be the goal of every artist, whether in painting or in writing, or any other form of art. An ambitious artist, and majority of them, if not all, are ambitious, usually wants either to say something new or to do it in a way more or less different than it had been done before, or preferably both. Therefore, the two distinctive types of originality can be identified in the creative process: the originality of substance and the originality of a form. The fact that these two types are different as far as the means of achieving the desirable end are concerned is obvious. What is not so apparent at first is the difference in their respective limitation, where the originality of substance is limited by our capacity as consumer of art to know, and the originality of form by our ability to apprehend what we perceived. The first supposes to increase our understanding, the second to enhance our perception. The valid claim could be made that our capacity to know, judging by the progress of human knowledge and understanding both the physical world of nature and psychological world of man, is at least theoretically limitless. Not so with the ability to apprehend what we perceived. Although the artist's ingenuity to invent newer and newer forms of expression is seemingly boundless, the ability of the viewers, reader, listeners to music, etc., is not. For example, to use language as a metaphor, we are able to comprehend more or less our mother tongue in all its numerous varieties of accent and dialects. But there is a point at which, after a long period of mutation, it becomes a completely foreign language, totally incomprehensible to us. And so in any art, each with its own special language, there comes a moment when a new and original form, instead of being a differently shaped window on the world, becomes an impenetrable wall. The ultimate barrier, the mother tongue, by getting less and less familiar, eventually became a foreign one. The most vivid instance of this phenomenon can be observed in the development of the modern visual art, which from the end of 19th century to the middle of 20th progressed, or shall we say regressed, in the search of the new forms of expression. From the representational realism to Impressionism, Cubism, etc., until it has finally reached the state of complete abstractionism, totally incomprehensible to the overwhelming majority of the viewers. The same trend, and during the same period of time, could be traced to a somewhat lesser degree in poetry and music, to name just a few. Either the lack of understanding, or worse, the blatant, even militant disregard by the artist, striving to come up with newer and newer forms of the limitation of human perception, has led eventually to their inevitable rejection by the public at large. For they, the artists, have forgotten, at their own peril, the fundamental laws of communication. One cannot speak to others in a language foreign to them and expect, never mind demand, to be understood. 439. As far as I am concerned, the only good thing about literary criticism is that it reminds me of the need to read the real books. 440. September went, still warm but wet. No summer more, no autumn yet. October suddenly arrived, the morning frost, the graying sky. November took leaves from the trees, caused birds to flee and people sneeze. December covered land with snow, put bears to sleep, froze high and low, and then we settle all to wait for spring as imminent as fate. 441. The best way to forget your own worries is to start worrying about somebody else's ones. 442. The institution of family is an altar on which the lives and aspirations of individual members are sacrificed in the name of the real or imagined good of the family as a whole. 443. For many a wife and for some husband, sex, like diplomacy for government, is a continuation of the domestic war by other means. 444. The older my body gets, the more it becomes the source of pain and less of pleasure. 445. The main drawback about being an atheist is having nothing to do on Sunday. 446. There is one very important truth all politicians should know better than anybody else, and yet always tend to forget it first. No matter how convincing you are, you would never persuade people to accept your point of view if they have already made up their mind before you even begin to speak. 447. I start to sense the looming death, its careful touch, its silent breath, no rush, no hurry, for it has the patience of assured success.